Hi, I'm Olufunke Grace Bankole, winner of a 2020 Oregon Literary Fellowship in Fiction. I'm currently writing a novel and stories that centers on the lives of Amina and Esther, a Nigerian daughter and mother. I want to thank Literary Arts for inviting me to be a part of this year's Portland Book Festival. And I'd like to give a special thank you to the Portland Art Museum and Isaka Shamsud-Din for allowing us to share in his stunning work, For the Love. The Yoruba people are one of the three major ethnic groups in Nigeria, comprising about 21% of the country's population. In Yoruba culture, particularly in the Ifa tradition, consulting the oracle of wisdom for guidance on one's life is a common practice. As a first-generation American of Yoruba parentage, my cultural understanding often figures into my writing. The reverence of dreams and divination and the attempt to put into words the ineffable are aspects that are especially fascinating to me. In this first short story I'll be sharing with you, Talk on Ilikura Street, we witness the events leading up to a young Amina running away from her father and stepmother's house to be reunited with her mother, Esther. Talk on Ilikura Street. I waited and nothing came. Then, as when fire is reignited under an already boiling pot, the things inside began to gurgle. And finally, shame. It crawled from my stomach and choked my chest like the bitter rise of unsettled food. The lies splattered up, soiled everything. That morning, I washed my face, brushed my head, and cleaned my teeth with an antiseptic chewing stick. After I went into my stepmother's bedroom to collect the breakfast money, I escaped. I took the Akara money and ran to the only bus stop I knew, the one past the burnt grass field, catty-cornered to the tailor's shop, next to the abandoned bread factory. Skinny 7-year-old legs, like the sprint of a frenzied ant, scraped the shadows of the Akara stand and tore into the direction of idled buses. Past neighbor's home, the fruit and plantain woman's stall, and the old albino man who sold sweet colored water in clear plastic bags, I ran. To the jingling of my stepmother's breakfast money in my shorts pocket, I ran still through cramped back roads, zigzagging the edges of muddy ditches. My throat, a wheezing hose, spitting into the humid morning air. When I arrived at my mother's flat on Ilikura Street, she was away at work. She came home to me sitting inside the entranceway, toasted 2 shades darker by the late afternoon's pigment-pounding rays. When I first became aware of our divinity, my mother and I lived on Ilikura Street in a tiny, rundown flat, the inside of which I hardly remember. The things that happen within, though, come like flashes of fire in the midst of cooling embers, random and uncertain. She slept in a room across from one in which I could never sleep too well. Into the mornings, waves of Indian film love songs tingled my ears. Each weeping note swam through a hallway that held captive in its wall cracks the fatty aroma of the spinach and dried fish stew she'd cooked hours earlier. That same hallway where a rope still hung loose from the neck of the ceiling fan, where it was said that flaunted secrets provoked the desperation of the abandoned mothers of resentful daughters, and where her mother, my grandmama, had threatened to end everything, and the rope had won. Sometimes I would stand in my mother's bedroom doorway, watching her stomach, absorbed. I'd move closer, my chest aching just then, as hers did not rise and fall as it should. I'd run to her side. Perhaps she was no longer breathing. Mummy me. Amina, what is it? She'd answer calmly as she woke, as if she'd anticipated this childish ambush. I thought you were dead. A few weeks into my stay at my father's home, his new wife decided that my mother sent me there to perform witchcraft. To all who listened, she proclaimed me a sorceress in training, my mother's little helper, there to set the curse to leave her barren. And so on 3 consecutive Sundays, she took me to the Confessions Holy Church. Knelt inside a circle of tongue-speaking women draped in bleach-white gowns with a child's giddy imagination, I related in detail my and my mother's plot. Soon after, I was taken about recounting these schemes that in truth were never hatched. Full breath sighs, disbelieving head shakes, and O-shaped mouths met us at each home of family and friends. Some my mother's, others my father's. Now, Amina, repeat to the elders how your mother plans to eat my womb alive, my stepmother demanded. Tell them how you stare at me as I sleep, calling to your witch bird totem to come for my unborn child. Tell them. My father's wife begged the elders to cajole me to release her womb, whatever it took. So began the entreaties to appease the curse. A new stringy-haired white baby doll, a slightly used bicycle, and 2 tiny bottles of sparkly fingernail polish. With the discipline of times table recitation and the storytelling gift of a child who had maybe lived before, I turned each suggestion into a layered sketch of witchery that never took place. The door of a tiny rundown flat swung boldly into the winding universe of barely used toys and pushed talk after talk of things I did not know. And with each word, I unwound that rope whose hugged strands had been my mother and me, her mother and her. In the next short story that I'd like to share with you, The Fifth Town, Amina, now a young married woman, is again on the run. This time, she's fleeing her marital home to the mythical Fifth Town, where the transmuting power of African baobab trees will protect her from gossip that threatens to destroy her future. The Fifth Town. All night, with the rain, the things they said she did barreled through neighboring towns. The words stopped and rested with whatever would get them to their next destination, creeks and gutters, mouths and ears. The foot soldiers of gossip, those with nothing better to do, had waited a long time for the arrival of words that, if carried on just so, at the right time, could destroy the life to which they pertained. Amina, trying to outrun them all, also traveled through the night. She ate a little, stretched her legs, and went to the bathroom only when the bus driver went. She was wrapped in the same shawl from the time she'd fled the street. Each thing she wore summoned back the room she'd walked through, nude and then fully clothed, dried off and then oiled down in the bathroom steam. Panties and bra snapped on in the sitting room, dress and shoes tied up in the kitchen. All this as the water boiled and the candles cooled. The shawl was the last thing. She'd wrapped it at the door just before coming into the view of someone who might be looking. Someone was always looking. But later on, no one could say for sure that they'd seen her near the bus stop because women's traveling attire was all the same. A long, formless dress over stringy shoes and a busily patterned shawl if the weatherman had said it would be cold. If Amina believed in the lore of the fifth town, and it seems she did, then she couldn't stop until there were exactly three towns between her and this place that had been her home. That home where, as soon as Victor's her mother-in-law, arrived later that day, stories about what Amina did to her son and how long it took her to do it streamed out of gossip joints and into the streets like ants on their way to work. By the second stop, the people who might have known Amina had hopped off the bus, one, sometimes a group at a time. Amina sat up and flipped off the shawl. She talked to herself with the carelessness of someone used to people thinking she was crazy anyway. She fingered through her purse for the envelope of cash and the paper with the address. She picked up the purse and flipped it. Her breasts felt tight. Her mother's warnings about Victor, the unease that had been scared into her, spurred the wheels of the bus onward. The bus driver held over his shoulder the strip of paper that had stuck to something, flicked off, and then wedged between the window and his seat. Amina reached toward his seat back. He didn't bother looking back at her through the mirror. He didn't need to. They were always this way, anxious and careless when running ahead of the words. "Thank you," Amina said, and then folded up the paper to tuck it inside her wallet. They traveled in groups, these words. They went with each other, linked in arms like comrades. If one story was felled by something like forgetfulness, another sprung up, ready to take its place. The mind is endless with bad things to say about someone you don't know. The fifth town. By here, the words would have worn out. They'd have told Amina and Victor's story over and over until they ran in loops of differing versions, tossed about with the spit of babbling idlers. The gossipers would have renamed them both, giving them monikers not so subtly resembling the originals. The fifth town was Amina's only hope for rest, not before and not after, when running was no longer worth the work. Only in the fifth town could the present eclipse the past. One morning before the fifth town, Victor, her husband, pretended to sleep. Amina was up, early, anxious. The night's dreams, fragments of feeling like bad or gloom, lingered. Outside their bedroom window, an iridescent swirl lit the dragging clouds. A line of deer threaded in and out of the woods. A fawn skipped to catch up with its herd. On the day Amina actually left, there hadn't been any harsh words between them. Victor ate up all his breakfast and her pretending that things were fine. Until he came home that night and found the slippers and towel and the very scene he'd imagined when he'd imagined her leaving. He hadn't thought today would be the day. Amina had held a middle-of-the-day vigil while Victor was at work. Her mother would have insisted she taught Amina better than this. How many times had she reminded her daughter that solutions to domestic matters were best sought in the night under the cover of darkness, when helping spirits hovered over misfortune? But Amina didn't trust Victor's slumber or the cover of night, so she waited until the dawning of day ensured his distance from home. The scrape on her inner thigh had just begun to scab. A warm cloth soothed the angry lines. Amina paced in their kitchen, then steadied herself at the counter's edge. There they'd sorted and cooked things. They'd moved around, not talking, not knowing what it was they were making. In tender moments, they'd wash their hands, fingers linked, under the faucet. Below the sink, inside the floor cabinet, behind the pipes, Amina pulled out the envelope of cash that her mother-in-law had left her. The rain and the sun swirled into a blush. Amina ran barefoot on the street, panting after a rainbow. But it was on the other side of town, farther than she'd ever reach on foot, that the Ark of Seven Colors was being an omen for someone else. She stooped at the gutter and held her hands cupped. It tasted salty, the mix of runoff water and sediment from the pots of backyard chefs. Used to greater lunacy than this, the street offered fewer onlookers than ought to have been the case. Amina scooped more water, and then there it was, a drop of sun, the Ark of Seven Colors. It was time to go. The fifth town. Its outer rim was lined by the towering, resistant baobabs. These trees, more than eyes could count, were said to shield the dwellers from the whims of nature and man. A raging fire or tongue, the tree's succulent roots transmuted the damage. Amina had seen a baobab in a dream once. Its upside-down roots were like arms reaching up. What lies ahead is close still, the dream voice had said. The bell rang for Amina's stop. The bus lurched forward, then sank its rear into the road. Amina awoke to the blurry sight of the baobab in rows, leafless but grand. The voice was the same in every dream, and despite the clatter of passengers climbing on and off with their things, it was clear and high like singing. Feet now firm in the fifth town, those words hung from Amina's memory, loose like fraying cloth. Thank you.